1,000 days. That's how long Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine has dragged on. 1,000 days into a war that was supposed to last just 3. Russia, the mighty bear, finds itself in free fall. Ukraine, against all odds, has turned the tide. They haven't just held their ground, they've grinded Russia's military into dust. The once indomitable Kremlin is crumbling under the weight of its own failures. What was supposed to be a swift military operation has turned into a quagmire. The military infrastructure is shattered. Thousands of tanks and armored vehicles lay in ruins. Russia's once proud army is disintegrating. The losses are staggering, and the morale is so low, it's practically non-existent. Putin's grand gamble, it's backfiring, and the cracks in his war machine, they're impossible to ignore now. But what sealed Russia's fate? What was the turning point that made it clear that Putin's empire was unraveling at the seams? It was a daring move by Ukraine that reshaped the battlefield, a surprise offensive that sent shockwaves through Moscow. The day the tide turned was August 6, 2024. The world would never be the same again. On that fateful day, Ukrainian forces launched an audacious strike deep into Russian territory. The target? Russia's KK Oblast, a place Moscow never thought it would have to defend. Ukrainian soldiers caught the Russians completely off guard, quickly breaching their defenses and seizing dozens of square miles of Russian land within the first few days. By the end of the first week, Ukraine had secured nearly 386 square miles of territory. This wasn't just a border skirmish. It wasn't a minor tactical move. This was a full-scale breach into Russian soil, a breach that forced Moscow to declare a state of emergency. Imagine that. The first Russian leader in modern history having foreign troops on Russian soil. The humiliation was palpable. It was a military disaster for Putin, and it exposed just how fragile Russia's position truly was. And it didn't stop there. The Ukrainian troops weren't just holding their ground. They were wreaking havoc on Russia's military infrastructure. Artillery, drones both playing pivotal roles in hammering Russia's positions. Thousands of Russian soldiers were sent to an early grave, day after day, in a relentless slaughter that shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, it only seems to be getting worse. Let's talk numbers. Numbers that show just how deep Russia's unraveling truly is. According to the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces, Russia has lost nearly 725,000 soldiers. 725,000 men shattered in less than 3 years. That's almost 750,000 lives gone in a war that was supposed to be over in weeks. And it gets worse. The deadliest days for Russian troops are not the early months of 2022, when the invasion began. No, those days are over. The real slaughter is happening now, in November 2024. The battlefield is more unforgiving, and every passing day brings more devastation. The 11th of November 2024, for example, saw nearly 2,000 Russian soldiers killed in a single day. To put this into perspective, that's almost as many American soldiers as the US lost in 20 years of war in Afghanistan. Yes, you heard that right. Russia lost nearly the same number of troops in 24 hours that the US lost over 2 decades. But this wasn't a one-off. No, it wasn't just November 11th. Every day in November has been a disaster. Losses over 1,500 troops per day have become the new normal. November 10th, over 1,700 Russian soldiers lost. November 12th, nearly 1,700 again. And the worst part? This is only the beginning. These numbers, these figures, they paint a terrifying picture of just how catastrophic Russia's position has become. But in the face of this devastation, Russia's propaganda machine keeps spinning a different narrative. They paint a picture of victory, of progress. Russian soldiers post videos claiming victories like capturing a Ukrainian Leopard 2 tank, which on closer inspection turns out to be nothing more than a decoy. A well-crafted one, but a decoy nonetheless. And then there's the arrest of Russian commanders, officers being arrested for inflating battlefield successes, overstating territorial gains, and claiming false victories. All in an attempt to save face and shield themselves from the wrath of Moscow. This is the reality for Russian commanders compelled to lie to protect their careers, and in doing so, exposing the growing chaos and paranoia within Russia's military leadership. The gap between Russia's glorious victories portrayed in state media and the grim reality on the ground has become so wide that even the Kremlin can no longer pretend everything is fine. The truth is leaking out no matter how hard they try to cover it up. Russia's equipment losses are equally catastrophic. Over 9,000 tanks, 19,000 armored vehicles, and 20,000 artillery systems destroyed. On November 19th alone, Ukraine took out 8 tanks, 27 armored vehicles, 49 artillery systems, and 91 drones. And here's the worst part. Russia can't replace what it's losing. The production lines are maxed out, and the losses are piling up faster than Russia can replenish them. The war machine is running out of steam. On paper, Russia's economy seems fine. GDP is growing, unemployment is low. But this rosy picture hides severe structural problems. The defense industry is consuming all resources, and inflation is skyrocketing. Military wages have increased fivefold, yet the civilian economy is crumbling under labor shortages. Putin has even slashed payouts for wounded soldiers, a desperate move to save money as the costs of war spiral. As Russia's manpower dwindles, it turns to North Korea. 11,000 North Korean soldiers have been deployed to fight in Ukraine, poorly trained, under-equipped, and labeled as cannon fodder by military experts. This desperate move speaks volumes about Russia's dire situation. Moscow is scraping the bottom of the barrel to stay in the fight. Putin's desperate push to recapture KK by February 1st, 2025, coincides with Donald Trump's re-election. Putin hopes to present a victory to the new U.S. president and secure a strong negotiating position. But this deadline is nothing more than a reckless gamble, one that will cost even more Russian lives. In a major shift, President Biden authorizes Ukraine to use long-range missiles on Russian soil. On November 19, 2024, Ukraine strikes a key Russian munitions storage facility in Karachev, marking a turning point in the war. This new capability allows Ukraine to hit high-value Russian targets far behind the front lines, crippling Russia's ability to sustain the war. NATO allies are now sending their own long-range missiles, and Russia's once secure borders are no longer safe. In response to the U.S. move, Putin rattles the nuclear saber, lowering Russia's threshold for nuclear weapons use. But these threats are just that, empty words. They're desperate attempts to regain control over a situation that is slipping away from him. Putin's war is unraveling. His army is decimated, his economy is teetering, and his alliances are crumbling. The clock is ticking, and it's only a matter of time before Russia's war effort collapses completely. Is Russia truly finished, or can Putin still turn the tide? What do you think? Will Ukraine continue to receive the support it needs, or will a change in U.S. leadership fracture the Western coalition? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the latest developments in this ongoing crisis.